What did he do that insinuated in any way he was under the influence?
Just the way he was acting nervous on scene, he was pacing, he wasn't being very cooperative with the investigation. All signs that could lead to somebody being impaired of a narcotic or some type of intoxicant.
So you did say I smelled like alcohol. And then what about alcohol?
It did not detect the presence of alcohol. It didn't detect the presence of alcohol. Although your license will be suspended, you may be eligible immediately for initial interlock license on your drive during the period of suspension. And if you're convicted of violating KRS 189A010 DUI.
Prosecutors have to do their due diligence, and in this case, they took a fair, thorough look at the facts before moving forward, and we respect that.
Why am I going to jail?
Don't tense up.
Why though?
I'll explain that in a minute.
An innocent man was arrested on a fake DUI. It was all caught on body cam,
You're
Hey
under
Carol, I'm going to jail.
which shows him blowing a 0 on the breathalyzer and also passing all of the field sobriety tests, and then him being arrested anyway. Nate Stevens was driving through his neighborhood when a teenager backed out of a driveway and hit him. Cops showed up who wanted to put Nate through a DUI investigation. Nate was actually very polite and cooperative, but they decided to make an example out of him because he didn't completely bend the knee and kiss their ring. Nate knew he wasn't drunk. Officer Bell of the Grayson, Kentucky Police Department claimed that he could smell alcohol on Nate.
because I can smell alcohol, so.
You're wrong.
Knowing that that was a lie, Nate blew his breath towards the officer.
Well, prove me wrong then. Do the test. Don't do that.
Okay, sir.
Only to have the officer threaten him.
The next time you make an aggressive move towards me, you will be going to jail for menacing, okay?
I got you.
Then Nate agreed to a breath test and blew a 0.
Keep going. Stop.
No alcohol in his system at all.
Right.
Nate then passed all of the field sobriety tests, which Officer Bell admitted, initially telling Nate that he would not be going to jail for DUI because he had agreed to take those tests and pass them.
If you didn't do any kind of observation test, I had enough to arrest you and place you under arrest for DUI. Okay, so you'd have been going to jail.
You would have got sued.
That's qualified immunity. I wouldn't have got sued, but okay.
But then, after Nate said he would have sued the officer had he arrested him, the two cops covered up the body cam and had a private conversation, ending with them changing their mind about arresting Nate and then throwing him in the back of the police cruiser, handcuffed.
So,
DUI?
yes.
I'm not under the influence.
Okay.
Bullshit. Is that literally what you guys are arresting me for?
All of this we covered in the last video, part 1 of this story, which I'll also link below if you haven't seen it yet. In this video, part 2, I'm going to tell you everything that happened next, including what happened when it went to court. Officer Bell was right about one thing.
Yeah, otherwise he's going to get hell over now.
Nate Stevens would spend the night in jail that night and not be able to bond out until the next morning.
Was your client ever actually given any traffic citations?
He was cited for DUI, failure to possess his operator's license, and leaving the scene of an accident and/or failure to render aid.
But he wasn't charged with anything alleging that he had driven improperly.
No.
DUI, the one thing you got done?
They'll be leaving the scene of an accident and some traffic charges. No. I was new about 10 years ago. What's going to happen is I'm going to take you down to King's Daughters. I got to read you implied consent. Well, then I'll then ask you to submit to a test of your blood, and then we'll go to the county. Okay.
So you did say I smelled like alcohol. And then what about alcohol?
It did not detect the presence of alcohol. It didn't detect the presence of alcohol.
Yes, sir.
What? Do what?
You say it didn't detect it. So obviously nothing happened.
I don't believe you're under the influence of alcohol. I don't believe you're under. I believe you're under the influence of the narcotic.
Okay, you said I smelled like alcohol.
Yeah, I did.
Due to the timing of the arrest, bond would be impossible until the next morning. Because it was a DUI arrest, Nate would be transported to the hospital for a blood draw, and pretrial services, which is what they call it, would not be in until the following morning. And the judge in this case would not be prepared to set a bond for Nate to get out of jail until pretrial services could make their assessment of him.
So is the air we breathe outside. So is the air outside, as polluted as it is.
So as planned by Officer Bell, Nate did in fact stay in jail until the following morning. And here's what happened while at the hospital.
Hey, sir. How you doing, sir?
Walk right through, man.
Don't go wrong.
Back again, man.
Yep.
How you doing, man? Yeah, I'm all right.
All right, man. I was gonna read you this. Okay. I will be requesting you submit to a test for your breath, blood, or urine, or any combination of these tests.
My breath?
If you refuse to submit to any test, which I request your refusal may result in the suspension of your driver's license by the court at the time of your arraignment, and if you are convicted of violating KRS 1898010 DUI, result in suspension of your driver's license and suspended by the transportation cabinet. If you refuse to submit to the breath or urine test,
I already did a breathalyzer.
this refusal may be used against you in court as evidence of your violation of KRS 1898010 DUI. Although your license will be suspended, you may be eligible immediately for an initial interlock license on your drive during the period of your suspension. And if you're convicted of violating KRS 1898010 DUI, you will receive the credit towards any other initial interlock requires for Rosmus arrest.
Pursuant to Kentucky law, prior to a blood draw to test Nate's blood for the presence of intoxicating substances, they had to read Nate an implied consent form. Nate didn't want to agree to anything without first talking to his lawyer. Just like he did at the scene of the arrest, Officer Bell refused to allow Nate to talk to his lawyer. He essentially forced him to make a decision without legal advice. As a result, Nate did not agree to having his blood drawn and giving his blood to the government without first being able to talk to his lawyer.
Based upon information which I previously read you, I now request you submit to test your blood. Okay. So you don't want a blood test?
No,
Okay. Fair enough.
I got a chance to interview Nate's lawyer, Derek Willis, about the situation. When he first got the body cam, he couldn't believe what he saw.
Was there ever any blood draw taken?
No, he refused to submit to the blood test unless his attorney was present, and it was his understanding that I could not be present because the officer stated if he called me or if I arrived at the scene, I would be a witness and unable to represent him.
I mean, the craziest part of this whole story is that all of this was knowingly recorded on body cam, except for the part that was purposefully destroyed. And even after receiving the case, the prosecuting attorney proceeded with the prosecution, trying to convict Nate of this entirely fake DUI charge.
In Kentucky, if you refuse their lab test, whether it be an intoxilizer, blood, or urine, that comes with enhanced penalties and pre-trial suspension of your operator's license. The refusal is whether his Sixth Amendment rights were violated, whether it was an actual refusal because the officer failed to explain the standardized field sobriety test properly during the initial stop. Also, the implied consent form that explains the consequences of a refusal was deficient. It improperly described how it could be used against them. And it also results in a pretrial suspension of the operator's license.
Have you tried comparing the video footage with what he wrote in the report?
I have. And the report is a little deficient and it is not consistent with what the body cam shows.
I took the breathalyzer. I didn't spit in your face. No, sir. You're not maintain balance. You literally got it on.
help you?
GPD dropping off one male. DUI, Lou received an accident. Not been very cooperative.
Oh, listen, okay, I'm gonna let one of my new little deputies book in. Please be nice, okay? I don't know what happened out there.
Hope you have one tonight, bro.
We'll get this on.
His lawyer, Derek, provided me with the footage from the refusal hearing.
We'll call the case of Nathaniel Stevens, 25T1902 on for refusal hearing. Is the Commonwealth ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defendant ready?
Yes, sir.
Call your first witness.
Commonwealth calls Officer Michael Bell.
Would you raise your right hand, please? You swear affirm testimony you're about to give is truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Say your name for the record, please.
It's Officer Michael Bell,
How are you employed?
the Grayson, Kentucky Police Department.
Were you employed at that capacity on October 6th of last year, 2025?
Yes, sir.
And did you have the occasion to come into contact with Nathaniel Stevens?
Yes, sir.
And was he placed under arrest for allegedly driving under the influence?
Yes, sir.
His lawyer, Derek, got the chance to cross-examine Officer Bell under oath.
Pass witness.
Your witness.
Thank you. The original call to dispatch was for a non-injury accident, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
He pointed out that this was a non-injury accident call where a 17-year-old kid had backed out of a driveway and hit Nathan. In other words, it wasn't a big deal. It was just a fender bender where a police response wasn't even necessarily required in the first place.
And the call was that Mr. Stevens was the victim of the accident.
The call came in that there was a two-vehicle non-injury accident. While myself and Sergeant Hall was responding, we was notified that one of the vehicles had left the scene.
Okay, and did you later learn that it was a 17-year-old kid who backed out of his driveway and hit Nathan?
Yes, sir.
And that he and Nathan exchanged information and there was no issue till his father learned about the accident later in one of the police reports. Is that accurate?
To the best.
I'm going to object unless he has first-hand knowledge of that happening.
Even though the prosecutor was trying to stop Nate's lawyer from questioning Officer Bell about much of anything during the hearing, the judge's curiosity was piqued, and the judge allowed Derek Willis to continue with his questions.
Plus, I'm going to object because we're having a refusal hearing. I'm not sure how this would...
How's
Tie
this
into
relevant
that.
to the refusal
Well,
hearing?
it is relevant for a couple of reasons. We do have knowledge because his body cam was on the entire time except for when he covered it and whispered. And second, during the entire encounter, there was no indication he was under the influence until a couple of things happened. So I'll keep it very brief, just a little bit of information.
Yeah, if you think, I'll let you have a little leeway there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nate's lawyer asked Bell about the lie that he claimed to have smelled alcohol, given the fact that we now know that Nate actually blew a zero. At first, he seemed to not really remember making this claim, so we had to refresh his recollection by reviewing his report, and his report actually said, I could smell a strong odor of alcoholic beverage coming from his person.
You claim you smelled alcohol, correct?
I don't believe so. Let me double check before I testify to that.
Bell knows full well that Nate blew a zero, so he tries to sort of steal Derek's thunder by disclosing that fact to the judge first, even before Derek can bring it up in his questions. Bell says, I smelled alcohol, but there were no signs of alcohol on the individual. In other words, he lied.
I did say I could smell a strong odor of alcoholic beverage, but there was no signs of alcohol from the individual.
Nate's lawyer then points out that after Bell claims to have smelled alcohol, and then he challenged Nate to prove he didn't smell alcohol,
Well, prove me wrong then. Do the test. Don't do that.
Okay, sir.
Nate blew his breath towards Bell, calling his bluff, or rather calling his lie. The prosecutor tries to shut him down as he points out Bell's misrepresentations, but the judge shuts the prosecutor down and lets Derek continue.
So when you told him that you smelled alcohol, he looked at you and went, did he not?
Not that I can recall. I mean, I don't want to say yes or no.
Derek Willis then points out that Bell threatened to arrest Nate for blowing his breath towards him.
And at that point, you got pretty close to him and said, if you make another aggressive movement toward me, I'm going to put you under arrest.
I did say that, yes, sir.
Was it an aggressive movement to breathe so that you could actually...
Judge, I don't understand what this line of questioning is for refusal. I still haven't caught on to, you know, I've given him a little leeway to try to get to a
I'm going to let him ask the question. Go ahead.
Bell defends his actions by claiming that he thought Nate was trying to spit on him.
So, whenever what he did end up blowing on me, but it could be taken as he was trying to spit or any above that could be taken as an aggressive manner.
But he didn't try to spit on you. He said, basically, I had been drinking. And you called that an aggressive movement, right?
But then Bell admits that when Nate exhaled, he knew that Nate wasn't trying to spit.
When the
It
act
was simply exhaling.
but it could have been taken as someone attempting to spit on him.
Did you take it as him trying to spit on you?
At first, yes, but then he did exhale the air.
The lawyer then forces Bell to admit that Nate agreed to take the breathalyzer test, which resulted in a 0.00 reading.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop. Right.
Bell admitted that the breathalyzer test showed that Nate had not consumed any alcohol.
When you specifically asked him, will you take the PBT, he said yes.
Yes.
And when he took the PBT, it was 0.000, correct?
It did not determine the presence of alcohol.
Okay. There was absolutely no indication of the presence of alcohol.
No, sir.
Okay. And at that point, did you explain the consequences of him declining to take that test when he took the PBT?
No, sir. I was asked if he would submit to it.
Okay. So did his hesitation all along appear to be lack of explanation, lack of understanding, rather than lack of cooperation?
It was a passive. I mean, he was very questionable about it, but I mean, I explained it the same as I would do any other traffic stop.
But his behavior and the fact that there was nothing in the PBT was consistent with no alcohol consumption. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Then the lawyer points out that after the breathalyzer test, Nate tried to call him, his lawyer, but Officer Bell threatened that if you call him, he'll be a witness and he can't represent you.
After the PBT, he tried to call me, didn't he?
I don't know who he tried to call you.
Well, on the video, you say if you call him, he'll be a witness and he can't represent you.
I said if he comes down here, he'll be a witness.
What's your name?
Bell, it's right here.
Okay. What's your name?
Sergeant Hall.
Okay.
If he shows up, he's a witness, so he can't represent you anyway.
So presumably he's trying to call me, right?
But at that point, he was detained.
This really gets the judge's attention, and the judge directs Bell to answer the question.
At that point, he was detained for the investigative purposes of
Answer the question. What was your question?
He tried to call me and you told him if he comes down here, he's a witness and can't represent you. You told him that, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
This is important because Nate's lawyer has established that Nate was in fact cooperative, but that he just had questions and he wanted to understand what was being asked and wanted to be able to talk to his lawyer in order to understand his rights, but that Officer Bell purposefully did not explain things properly and wrongfully deprived Nate of access to his lawyer.
Are you trained to tell people they can't call a lawyer?
No, sir. But on a
Under what authority do you have to tell somebody if they try to call a lawyer, you can't call him, he can't represent you?
on the point of a traffic stop, you're detained until that. You're afforded an opportunity if we go for any kind of chemical testing.
So back with the testing, again, he said he didn't want to take a test without his lawyer present.
Mm-hmm.
And you previously told him if his lawyer's present, he can't represent him.
For the observation testing, but he's afforded an opportunity to contact, communicate with an attorney via phone.
Did you sit down and tell him the difference between a lawyer not being able to represent him if he shows up at the scene versus not being able to represent him if he called during the implied consent?
No, it's in the compliant consent that he's afforded 10 minutes, but not more than 15 minutes to attempt to contact, communicate with an attorney.
Then Nate's lawyer points out that after Nate took all of the tests and passed them, he was told that he was going to be issued citations and not be placed under arrest.
Everything was recorded on the body cam, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And there was a point in time after he took the PBT and after he took his field sobriety test that you said, I'm going to issue some citations. I'm going to go over and talk to the other attorney. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, he was not under arrest.
He was still detained, but he was not under arrest at that time.
And you indicated he wasn't under arrest, that you were just going to give him a citation.
He was going to get some citations, but I never told him if he was or was not going to be placed under arrest.
And did he ask you what's the citation for? You told him you'll find out when I get it.
As in, I'll explain it like I do every traffic stop, each charge that's on the citation.
Then afterwards, you went and spoke to the victim, or not the victim, the perpetrator actually, and his father, who were standing off to the side, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you told him, I'm going to hand out a citation. You can come to the police department in 2 days to get the report.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't tell him he was under arrest.
I did not tell the other party that he was under arrest, no.
You came back and you told Mr. Stevens, if you hadn't have done the standardized field sobriety test, you would have been under arrest.
I did say that, yes.
And when you said that, he said, well, you would have been sued. Is that correct?
To the best I can recall, he did.
And your response was, no, I have qualified immunity. I wouldn't be sued.
I don't recall that.
Okay, it's in the video. We'll watch it.
Officer Bell, though, refuses to admit this, but the body cam shows the truth. Bell says, was it that hard? If you hadn't have done any observation tests, you would have been placed under arrest for DUI and would be going to jail. He said he would have gone to jail, but you should be happy that you're not going to go to jail because you took the tests and passed them.
If you didn't do any kind of observation test, I had enough to arrest you and place you under arrest for DUI. Okay, so you'd have been going to jail.
You would have got sued.
That's qualified immunity. I wouldn't have got sued, but okay.
Then that's where Nate responds, and you would have been sued, causing Bell to then change his mind and perform an illegal arrest for a fake DUI.
You're under arrest.
Carol, I'm going to jail.
Yeah, I don't know why. Quit trying to pull away from me.
Next, Officer Bell was confronted about the fact that after Nate said he would have sued him, he covered his body cam and whispered with his supervisor, Sergeant Hall.
And at that point, you walked away and you spoke to Sergeant Hall.
Yes, sir.
And you covered your body cam and whispered.
We wasn't whispering. I did remove it off my chest and communicated with Sergeant Hall.
And why would you do that?
Just speaking with the sergeant on the scene.
And at that point, you came back and told him he was under arrest.
I did consult with Sergeant Hall regarding the observations that we observed, and we come to a mutual conclusion that we believe he was going to be under the influence.
You came to the mutual conclusion.
Or a conclusion that we believe he was under the influence.
Bell testified that he consulted with Sergeant Hall about the observations they observed and that they came to the mutual conclusion that Nate was under the influence. When Derek asks, what did Nate do that indicated to you and Sergeant Hall that he was under the influence, there was a long pause.
What did he do that insinuated in any way he was under the influence?
Just the way he was acting nervous on scene, he was pacing, he wasn't being very cooperative with the investigation. All signs that could lead to somebody being impaired of a narcotic or some type of intoxicant.
And then Bell said just the way he was acting nervous on the scene. He was pacing, he wasn't being very cooperative with the investigation. First of all, since when is pacing a sign of intoxication? If anything, it's a sign of someone not being intoxicated. Secondly, the body cam shows that Nate wasn't pacing. Bell's own body cam shows Nate literally not pacing and actually being very still. First, he's sitting on the tailgate of the truck, not even fidgeting around at all, pretty much perfectly normal. Then, after they close the tailgate of the truck, Nate stands in one place next to the bed of the truck for an extended period of time as he talks to Officer Bell. Then he performs the tests that they instruct him to perform, all without pacing. And then Nate is once again standing beside the bed of the truck after having passed the test. During none of that encounter was Nate pacing at all or acting intoxicated in any way. Yet Officer Bell testified under oath that Nate was pacing, and that as a result, he and his supervisor concluded that Nate was under the influence. Then Nate's lawyer confronts Bell about the claim that he was allegedly uncooperative.
How was he not cooperative? He did everything you asked him to after you explained what you wanted him to do. He didn't call me when you told him that I couldn't represent him if I appeared. He hung up the phone with him. How was he uncooperative?
He was very confrontational, was back and forth on wanting to submit the test.
But after you told him what the test was, he did it. Except for the final test that he refused.
He didn't, yes.
Bell was forced to admit that Nate was actually cooperative, leaving basically zero allegations of Nate being intoxicated at all.
The only possible theory of their case is that he was on some sort of intoxicating substance other than alcohol because he blew a zero.
I suppose, because I have not personally heard any allegation that he was under the influence of a specific substance.
I saw that they searched his truck, or the truck he was driving. They didn't find any sort of intoxicating or illegal substances in the truck, right?
They did not.
Then Nate's lawyer points out that Bell covering his body cam wasn't done for any legitimate reason.
When you covered the camera, were you trying to call the prosecutor asking for legal advice?
No, sir. I was speaking with the sergeant on scene.
Bell was confronted with the fact that this illegitimate secret conversation took place right after Nate threatened to sue him.
Okay, and at that time, you weren't in fear of your safety, it wasn't for officer safety or anything?
No, sir.
Why would you cover your camera?
It was a tactic. I just went up and spoke with Sergeant Hall. Wade, we wasn't.
Did you say a tactic?
It was I moved it off my chest to go up and speak with Sergeant Hall. We wasn't in contact with the other party there, so it was just myself and the sergeant.
But that was right after he said if you would have arrested me, you would have been sued, wasn't it?
Not that I can recall.
Did that have anything to do with you covering the camera and whispering to Sergeant Hall?
No, sir.
Okay.
Bell said he didn't remember that being the case, but the body cam proves otherwise.
Okay, so you'd have been going to jail.
You would have got sued.
That's qualified immunity. I wouldn't have got sued, but okay. You are going to end up going to jail tonight, okay?
Boy,
Nate's lawyer points out that Sergeant Hall told Nate that if he passed the tests, he'd be good, but Bell claims to not remember that either.
And Mr. Stevens asked you specifically when you asked him to continue doing tests, if I do these tests and I pass, am I good? And what did you say? Do you recall that question?
No, sir.
Do you recall hearing Officer Hall say, if you're not impaired, you are?
I don't recall that, sir.
Okay. And after that assurance, Mr. Stevens at that time did the field sobriety test, correct?
Yes, sir.
He did everything you instructed.
Yes, sir.
He also points out that Nate performed all of the tests that he was asked to do, and that he then told Bell that he was making him nervous. The officer also admitted that nervousness does not equal impairment.
He said, man, you're making me nervous.
He may have, I don't want to say yes or no.
Okay. Nervousness is not impairment.
No, sir.
And there goes the only other allegation of intoxication according to Bell, that Nate was allegedly nervous. In reality, that's not intoxication or even evidence of intoxication.
You told him, like I just asked you, if he had not done the test, he would have been going to jail.
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that that insinuated he wasn't going to jail at that time?
No, sir. I was saying that I had enough based off him not wanting to do field sobriety that I believe he would be under the influence.
And then after he did and told you you would have been sued, at that point you did arrest him.
Yes, sir, because I believe he was under the influence.
In the end, Nate wins the hearing. The judge sets aside Nate's alleged refusal to take the blood test so that it can't be used against him.
I will set aside the refusal.
In other words, Nate did not technically refuse under the law to take the test because Officer Bell did things improperly, and he denied Nate access to his lawyer, which would have enabled Nate to understand his rights before making a decision.
It is what it is.
What ended up happening with this police officer, Bell? Is he still working for the Grayson Police Department?
I believe he transferred to another agency.
The supervisor, Sergeant Hall, presumably he's still there at the Grayson Police Department?
He is. He's worked there for many years.
And that's kind of scary because he sat there and watched this whole false arrest take place and sounds like participated in it because it only occurred after this private conversation, the substance of which the evidence was destroyed. But he watched this whole thing go down. He was the on-scene supervisor. He allowed it to happen. He enabled it to happen, and he's still there.
Yes, and I do believe he should have stepped in and acted, in this case, as a supervisor.
I would really like to hear what explanation he has for his behavior and allowing that to happen. I've been a DUI prosecutor. I've defended them. I don't think I've ever seen a worse DUI arrest in my career.
Yes, I prosecuted for approximately 13 years and have also been a criminal defense attorney. And I will agree with you that I've never seen a DUI charge that was so weak.
Just on every level. I mean, and your client is actually the victim of the traffic accident. I mean, you couldn't create a worse DUI case just fictionally.
Another thing that I would just add, Mr. Bryan, is that my client is a personal trainer. He takes nutrition and health very seriously. He lives a clean lifestyle, does not drink alcohol or do drugs. This had a serious impact on him because he had never been in that sort of situation before, never had any negative interaction with law enforcement. And it's just amazing that under these circumstances that he was arrested, pushed against his truck, and treated in such a way. Even though he was compliant, he did nothing wrong. And this just shows that you can be compliant and through no fault of your own have your constitutional rights violated. And for the rest of his life, people will look at him as he was arrested for a DUI. So regardless of the outcome of the criminal case, this has affected his reputation in the community, and just psychologically being treated that way by law enforcement is ridiculous.
When I interviewed Nate's lawyer, Derek Willis, the DUI charge against Nate was still pending. Fortunately, since then, the prosecutor apparently got around to actually watching the body cam footage, and then once he did, quickly agreed to drop the fake DUI charge. That then still left the leaving the scene of an accident charge, as well as the citation for not having his actual physical driver's license on him while operating a motor vehicle. I'm told that as of just a couple of days ago, actually, those charges have now been resolved, with the prosecutor agreeing to what's commonly referred to as a deferred adjudication. That means that after the passage of a period of time, in this case 90 days, the charges get dismissed without there ever having been any conviction. It's usually a deal worth taking anything, so Nate took it.
I'm pleased to report that the DUI was dismissed. The prosecution carefully reviewed the evidence, the body cam, breathalyzer test, and the field sobriety test, and made the right decision to dismiss it. Prosecutors have to do their due diligence, and in this case, they took a fair, thorough look at the facts before moving forward, and we respect that. So after the DUI was resolved, the other charges were resolved through the normal court proceedings. Most importantly, Nate's name has been cleared. Thanks again for all of your support, and we will keep you updated if there are any future developments.
So the criminal charges are now successfully resolved, with the fake DUI already being dismissed. Next up, hopefully, is a civil lawsuit. Why? Because this arrest never should have occurred in the first place. A warrantless arrest requires the existence of probable cause to believe that the suspect committed a criminal offense. An officer has probable cause if the facts and circumstances within the officer's knowledge would lead a reasonable officer to believe that the suspect has committed, is committing, or is about to commit an offense. In this case, would a reasonable officer have probable cause to believe that Nate was driving under the influence? Absolutely not. There was no evidence that Nate was under the influence. Quite the opposite. There was actually objective evidence that he was not under the influence because they tested his breath, which indicated 0 alcohol in his system. And they also gave him the field sobriety tests, which he objectively passed, which we know because we have video evidence showing that. Most likely, this arrest was only made in retaliation for Nate not adequately bending the knee to these officers' egos, and possibly also for threatening to just hypothetically sue the officer. Nate had no obligation to stroke the ego of this police officer. To the contrary, Nate had a First Amendment right to express himself in the way that he did. The Supreme Court has held that the freedom of individuals to oppose or challenge police action without risking arrest is one of the principal characteristics by which we distinguish a free nation from a police state. For Officer Bell to arrest him as a consequence was also a violation of Nate's First Amendment rights. Nate was actually very mild in his speech. He had a right to be much more expressive. The Sixth Circuit, which includes Grayson, Kentucky, has held that calling a police officer an during a traffic stop is protected speech, and an arrest based solely on such an insult violates the First Amendment. So here in Officer Bell, we have a police officer who is on record demonstrating on video and writing and in court that he's perfectly willing to violate the Fourth Amendment as well as the First Amendment in order to retaliate against a completely innocent individual just to stroke his own ego. I think the city of Grayson, Kentucky has since realized this, resulting in Officer Bell no longer being employed there. Where did he go? We will get back to that, but the Nate Stevens incident wasn't the only instance of Officer Bell's police misconduct in Grayson, Kentucky being caught on video. Nate's lawyer also gave me footage of an even worse incident that happened only about a month after Nate's fake DUI arrest. This involves a young guy who was arrested basically for an extremely minor charge of just being intoxicated after a night of having fun with his friends. This young guy was mistreated by Officer Bell, and he was eventually thrown in a holding cell in Grayson.
Sit down.
Please, no.
Sit down.
Please,
I'm not telling you again. Sit down.
Please.
He was begging for help. He was highly intoxicated and probably needed medical help, but he got something very different.
What'd you bust your nose on?
So stay tuned for part 3 of Officer Bell in this next video, and you can follow along by subscribing both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. You can follow me on X and the other socials at JohnBryanESQ. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.